There are a few announcements before we officially get started. If you haven't been before, we have a Facebook group. If you go on Facebook and you search WordPress Accessibility Meetup, or sorry, not WordPress Accessibility Meetup, just WordPress Accessibility, then you will find the Facebook group. It's also facebook.com/groups/WordPress.accessibility is the URL. And that's a great way to connect with people in between meetups, get answers to questions, share ideas, or just generally talk about accessibility. We occasionally get questions that are also not WordPress. So if you're interested in talking and connecting between meetups, that's a great place to go and join the group. You can find upcoming events and recordings of past meetups at equalizedigital.com/meetup. This is a frequently asked question. This meetup is being recorded. The video will be available in about 2 weeks. We want to have corrected captions and transcript first, and then we will post that up. So that is where you can find it. If for some reason you can't stay for the whole event or you want to catch a replay to review something that you learned, that video will be available on our website in about 2 weeks. If you want to get notified when those are available or get other web accessibility news, we recommend joining our email list. You can sign up for that at equalizedigital.com/focus-state. You also, if I have the meetup set up properly, will probably have a opt-in form as a thank you page after you leave Zoom. But if not, that's where you can go sign up. We send 2 emails a month. So it's not a lot, but it has upcoming events. It has other news from around the web related to accessibility, and it has links to the recordings when they become available. So that is a great way to stay up to date on everything that's happening. We are seeking sponsors for the meetup. We do rely on sponsors to help us cover the cost of making it accessible. Unfortunately, the WordPress Foundation doesn't have funds to cover live captioning or sign language interpretation if we want to be able to offer that. So if anyone or their company is interested in helping to sponsor Meetup, please reach out to us. We would very much appreciate it. And there is also information about sponsoring on that same Meetup webpage. If you have any suggestions for the Meetup or you need any accommodations that would make it work better for you, please reach out to us at meetup@equalizedigital.com. That will go to both myself and Paula, our other co-organizer, and is a great way to connect with us. We love to hear from people, and we'll do whatever we can to make it work well for you. So who am I? I've been talking and I haven't introduced myself. If you've been before, you probably know, but if you haven't, I'm Amber Hines. I'm the CEO of a company called Equalize Digital. We're a certified B Corporation that specializes in WordPress accessibility. That's pretty much all we do. We also have a software product, a WordPress plugin called Accessibility Checker, which helps find some accessibility problems, the ones that can be identified automatically on your WordPress website, and it puts reports sort of like the SEO plugins do on the post edit screen. You can find out more about that on our website if you want, and we're on Twitter at Equalize Digital. We have 2 sponsors today, and actually one of our sponsors is also our speaker, which is kind of fun. But Empire Caption Solutions, which you're going to get to hear more about them, I'm sure, when our speaker Daniel introduces himself. But they have very generously for almost a year now, I want to say, they have sponsored our transcript and SRT creation so that we can have captions on the recordings of our videos that are accurate for everyone after the fact. And we very much appreciate that because we were doing it ourselves. And when you guys, this is like the horrible secret that is not a secret if you ever see me type, is that I type like 40 words per minute or something incredibly slow. So it was taking us, I don't know, all day to caption one meetup video. So we very, very much appreciate this. In addition to providing the captions, They also do audio description, they do sign language interpretation, and Daniel is just a great guy. So we're really excited to have him here, and you'll hear more from them later on. Their website is empirecaptions.com. And I know you guys, Daniel, you don't use Twitter too much, but I always tell people to give us a shout out, a thank you to our sponsors on Twitter, because I think that helps encourage them to want to keep sponsoring. So they are at Empire Caption on Twitter. And then our live captions are being covered by Bette Hannon's company, Accessicart. Accessicart is relatively new, but it's just the name that's new. Bette's been doing accessibility and her team for a long time. And they have a lot of experience with WooCommerce. And so they are really specializing in e-commerce accessibility and WooCommerce accessibility. So if you have a WooCommerce store, definitely check them out. And she is kindly covering the cost of our live captioner today. So you can learn more at accessicart.com, and that's AccessICart.com. And they are at Accessicart on Twitter if you want to tweet a thank you to them as well. We have 3 upcoming events that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of. Our next meetup will be held by Colleen Gratzer, who I think I saw in the attendee list today. And she will be talking about using InDesign to create accessible PDFs, which web accessibility guidelines don't just apply to your website. They also apply to any digital content you put out on the web, which would include your PDFs. Some of the top mistakes and how you can fix them when you're creating PDF documents. So that will be very exciting. And then our normal meetup, which would be this time in November, we are not having, but it's because we're going to be doing WordPress Accessibility Day. Registration is open. If you go to the website, it is a full 24 hours of great talks on accessibility, panel discussions. There's going to be some short lightning talks, all different levels, design, development, content, all kinds of things. So we highly encourage you to go. It's totally free to register, and registration is open now. And then our next meetup will be Monday, November 21st at 7 p.m. And Alicia St. Rose will be talking about accessibility in your content. So we have a lot of great things coming up. I am very excited to introduce our 2 speakers. I'll add a spotlight for them in just a second. But Daniel Sommer and Kate Irvin. Daniel is the COO, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, at Empire Caption, and Kate Irvin is the executive director of Typewell, and they are going to be speaking with us today about transcription types and different ways that you can approach captioning and transcriptions. So I'm going to hide myself and stop sharing my screen and let them take over. If you do have any questions, I will be watching the Q&A, so please put those in, and then we will get to those as we're able.
Great. Oh, I'm up. Hello, Amber, thank you so much for having us. Like we were doing this, the captions and the transcript for a year now and it's really wonderful to be able to talk a little bit more about the service. I've learned a whole lot about WordPress accessibility and web accessibility just by being, part of these meetups and reviewing all the transcripts and everything. And it's so wonderful to be a part of this and to have such a resource. And one of the things you said in the introduction was, as people who are developing WordPress sites and content for the web, it's not just that the sites themselves are accessible, but all the content that goes on there is also accessible. And what I've found, there's so many different ways to go about transcribing something. There's different methods, and even in the beginning when we were first working together, we had to spend a little bit of time to get on the same page about what exactly, we were providing versus what you were expecting, and get on the same page with expectations. So, my hope is today that we're able to go through some of the more nuanced details of transcription. And I've invited Kate here today to join me to talk also about a lesser known type of transcription called meaning for meaning. And there's all sorts of really wonderful uses for that. Kate and I have been working together for about 10 years or so. Kate is the executive director of Typewell, and also one of the head trainers and experts on the subject. So I'm really glad that we're able to have this talk today, and we'll be talking more about meaning for meaning towards the end. We're going to start by looking at transcription in general. And I have a little slideshow I'm going to bring up. And if any questions arise during the talk, just put them in the chat, and Amber or Paula will get them to me. But we'll of course have some time at the end. So I want to thank the captioner, who's doing the captions normally and as usual. And a little bit later, I'm going to be introducing a live Typewell transcript, or meaning for meaning transcript. We're just going to give that a little more context before throwing that at you. Kate, is there anything you'd like to say before we dive in?
No, you go ahead. I'll be glad to join in later once you've set things up. Thanks,
Great.
Dan.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, let me just get the screen going. Excellent. Okay, so this is the great. So I'm from New York. Before I got into transcribing and captions and accessibility, as a professional classical singer in New York. And in New York is one of the oldest bars, McSorley's. And when you go to McSorley's, you walk in and you ask for light or dark. They only have two options for their beer. You walk in and you know what you're going to get. And if they give you the wrong one, it's really clear just by looking at it, even before you taste it. And if you make it so far as the taste, you're going to know, if it's the right drink or not. Now, they've mastered their brew, and it's a consistent experience every time. But if you go down the block to Blind Tiger, they offer around 30 or 40 different types of beer on tap, in addition to bottles and everything else. And so if you're going into Blind Tiger and saying, I'd like a dark beer, you're going to be bombarded with a whole bunch of questions, or what other beers do you like? What do you drink? How can I give you what you want? If you walk into McSorley's, it's going to be pretty clear, that you're going to get what you're looking for. And a lot of why am I bringing up beer at McSorley's? Well, so often, almost every day, I have conversations with people, and we think we're being clear. When I say I want a transcript, well, what does that really mean? Where are you using it? Who's using it? Are they going to, are the people who are using it, is it going to be effective and beneficial for them? Are they, when are they getting it? Where are they getting it? How are they accessing it? All of these things are really important questions. And we can't always have a very simple conversation where you just say, I want the light one, or I want the dark one. All of these conversations are more nuanced. And that's what I'd like to, talk about today. What do we mean by transcription? I've heard, as a musician, do we mean musical transcription? Or is someone playing a melody and are we transcribing it down or dictating it? Biology and genetics, DNA sequences, that's also a type of transcription. Mathematical or, numbers. Phonetic, if someone's in linguistics or NLP, speech pathologist, how do we transcribe sound? That's a whole with the International Phonetic Alphabet. Transliteration and transcription often get conflated or used interchangeably. Transliteration taking from from Arabic or Russian from a non-Roman alphabet and transliterating it or translating it, transcribing it into the Roman alphabet. And then to get to where what we'll be talking about today, lexical or verbatim transcription, which involves the spoken word or spoken sounds and putting that into the written format. So in all of these, the specifics are slightly different. We're taking something from one medium and we're putting it into another. And with the verbatim or the lexical, we're taking spoken language or sounds and words and putting that into the written format. And this is where, things can start to get a little hairy, a little complex. And this is why, number one, having the conversation is so important to understand, and also to understand that there are so many different words that can come up with this. And at the end of the day, we're really only talking about a few things, but I'd like to look at some of the terms that we see in the different settings. So verbatim, full verbatim, complete verbatim, clean verbatim, intelligent verbatim, condensed verbatim, full transcript, stenography or stenographers, revoicing, voice writing, dictation, CART, which is communication access, translation, or transcription. There's still some disagreement there. Meaning for meaning, summarization, note-taking, an SRT transcript, lexical transcription, and monolingual translation. And so if you're working in the education realm, certain words and vocabulary and terms are used. If you're working with a localization firm, different words and terms are used. If you're working with a marketing firm, different terms. So it really depends on the context that's going to determine which of these services you really need and what's going to be effective in those settings. So I was going to talk about this a little later, but I wanted to bring this up because we have some other people working behind the scenes today, and I want to introduce them sooner rather than later. But a question that often comes up, are transcripts and captions the same? Even as I'm looking at the Zoom meeting right now, it says live transcription, parentheses, closed captions has been enabled. Who can see this transcript? So if you do turn on the closed captions on the Zoom, they're going to be appearing instantly. And if you enable the live Zoom transcript, that's going to be somewhat slightly delayed, but the format of those and the layout of those and the timing of those is really what makes one of the biggest distinctions. And so when we're talking about transcripts and captions, they both contain the spoken text. They both contain the words that are being heard in the audio or the video. Now, transcripts contain the entire text. So usually in paragraph form, and we're going to go over what good transcript practices are. But essentially, the person reading the transcript will have access to the transcript from the time it starts until the time it ends, and they can go back and look at what was said before, and they'll see what's happening as it comes. Captions, on the other hand, are just they're displayed on the screen with the video for a set period of time, and then they disappear. And so even though the text content is the same, the way that we're digesting that and the way that we're able to experience is different. One is very immediate, where we have to stay locked in, we have to look at it, and if we miss it, it's gone. So in that sense, it's more like the audio experience of, if you miss something, it's gone, you can't go back, you can't rewind, you have to go forward. Transcripts record the whole event, and you can go back and view them even during the presentation. And like I mentioned, there's a few different types of transcriptions, and typically we're used to what's called verbatim, and that means all the words are captured and displayed. And that's what you're seeing with the closed captions today. When you click the closed caption button, you turn those on, one or two lines appears at a time, the words show up, it's great. And there was, I guess a while ago, Meryl was blanking on her name. She's brilliant.
Meryl Evans.
Thank you, Meryl Evans. Gave a presentation on closed captions, and she really very insightfully said, not everyone likes closed captions. Some people prefer the transcript. The way that they process information is better suited towards the transcript and reading it through the transcript versus seeing it just for a set period of time and then moving on. So what we've done today is we're giving access to two types of transcription. One is the verbatim. It's going to be the same text that you're seeing in the captions, just in paragraph form. And I think Paula has the link for that if you'd like to view it. And then also I'm joined behind the scenes by my business partner, Diana Lerner, and she's doing what's called type well, or meaning for meaning transcription. And we're going to talk about it, but it's much more concise and it's geared a lot for educational settings. I'm going to talk a lot more about it with Kate later in the talk, but I wanted you to have access to both of those at the beginning so you can bring them up, you can read through them, you can see the differences. And we're going to go into those differences now a little more in depth. So I just want to thank the captioner and Diana both for doing that, and feel free to load both of those, put them side by side to see the differences. So going on, is transcription a form of translation? And this is, it's a really good question. If we look at the OED, the Oxford University Press Dictionary, the translation is defined as the conversion of something from one form or medium to another. And in that sense, we're taking an auditory experience, a heard experience, and translating it into a visual experience. And there's different things we do in those mediums, or in when we're experiencing something auditorily, and when we're exploring or experiencing something visually. And very often when we're engaged in conversation or we're listening to a presentation, especially if there's more natural speech, there's a lot of what are called filler words, huh, like, and very often we're able to filter out that noise, and we're able to hear the core concepts that are being shared in the main message. And if we weren't to hear the ums, hus, it really wouldn't affect our understanding so much. So how, we don't want all of that auditory noise that we often just filter out to be present visually? Like, do we want to recreate that visual noise, or are we trying to create a transcript that is more suited for reading and more suited for the page? And so if we are translating from one experience to the other, or one medium to the other, what are the important things, that we need to consider? And how can we make sure that we're providing equal access to the people who need it? So I'd like to go over now, just regardless of the setting, whether, we haven't even talked about it, real time, post-production, recorded media, broadcast, wherever the transcript is going to be, what are the core parts that are going to make it usable and accessible and give people access to the information they need? So number one, who is speaking? We need to know who is speaking, and very often if there's captions, we see the text and we see the person, and so we know. But if we're only experiencing if we're only experiencing the transcript, then it's without the audio, or we're relying on the transcript for the information. We really need to know who is speaking. So that's number one. Number two, what are they saying? What's being spoken? What's being heard in that audio? And then a continuation of that, any relevant environmental sounds, or sounds that are not words or verbal sounds, but sounds that occur that are important to understanding what's happening. So. And then to go a little bit more into the nuance of who is speaking, it's important to include a name or a title if it's known. And we want to avoid things, if the name or person or the title isn't known, we want to avoid things like gender or appearance identifiers, because a lot of time, unless we know for certain, sometimes it's difficult to assign someone's gender or also just identify them based solely on appearance. So unless you know the person in the recording and you've spoken with them and agreed upon that, typically avoiding gender or appearance is preferred. And then indicating when speakers change. So making sure that when the speaker stops and the new one begins, that's clearly indicated. And then what are they saying? So how do we accurately capture a speaker's message? We're going to talk more about accuracy in a bit, but it needs to be an accurate a representation of what was said in the written format. Needs to use proper writing conventions so that people reading it can follow along. And then where it's slightly different from captions is that we have more control over the layout of the page and how easily we set it up for people to read and to digest the information. Are we making clear paragraph breaks? Are we using white space appropriately? Is the page laid out in a way that allows us to consume the information in an easy way, And then the last part, and this is very important, but it's also it's more subjective than the other parts. What is a relevant environmental sound? So noises, alarms, phones, animals, something that is going to add important information to the reader. Just as a quick aside, early on, I was typing for a live class, and my student did not hear that there was a fire alarm, and there was no visual lights or any cues to indicate that there was a fire alarm. No one had come over and tapped this person on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's a fire, there's a fire alarm." And so sometimes you don't think of these things, but if people are looking at a transcript for access to real time, all of these sounds are super important. You know, they do have real life consequences, in addition to sharing the message and making sure everything's represented clearly. And then laughing, applause, crying, chuckling. So sounds that we make that are not words, but that are part of the communication. It's equally important to include if something is indiscernible or inaudible, because what we're trying to do is create an accurate representation of what's in the audio or video. And so if something can't be heard, or it's inaudible, or you can't tell what it is, even after listening to it a bunch of times, it doesn't make sense to try to fill in the gaps. It's not accurately representing what's in the audio. So that's important. And then this is also something that's very subjective: changes in speaker's tone or manner of speaking. So if someone changes the inflection, or someone speaks in falsetto with a very high voice, but typically speaks like this, that is important to indicate. It's very difficult in this aspect to not interpret what someone means by the change in tone or in manner, but rather how do we accurately describe what is happening in a way that is not judging or assuming what's happening. So this is kind of the more nuanced parts of it. And what I'd like to do now is look at 3 different transcripts. And I'm going to play the audio at the end, but I'm going to put them on the screen one at a time. We'll just start with this first one. This is of an opening to a meeting, and I'm going to be quiet for a moment. Just leave this up for 30 seconds or so, and just take your time and look through it, skim it, go word by word, however you like.
So I actually wonder, I think that we should read it.
Okay.
Only because we may have someone on this call who is not able to see the slides.
Okay,
So,
is it cool if we wait a minute and then I read it?
yeah, we can pause for a minute, and then if you don't necessarily think it's important to read it all, at least the section that you want to highlight, we want to make sure we read.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. 3 accurate transcripts. Number 1. Terry, I'd like to welcome everyone to the plenary session, roundtable discussion, working 9 to 5 in your pajamas, life in the times of COVID-19. Presenting today or speaking on the panel will be John Fudrow from the University of Pittsburgh Libraries, Aurora Young, University of North Carolina, Charlotte Graduate School, Elise Fox and Dana Dickman from Sacramento State University Library. The moderators today are myself, Terry Green from the University of Toledo, and Stacy Wallace. I don't know if Stacy is on here yet. I don't hear her, so I'll just continue to go along. I'm gonna stop there. Is that okay? Okay, cool. So go to this next one. And we'll do the same. I'll just leave it up for about 30 seconds and then I'll read it. Okay, 3 accurate transcripts. Number 2, Terry. I'd like to welcome everyone to the plenary session, roundtable discussion, working 9 to 5 in your pajamas, life in the times of COVID-19. Presenting today or speaking on the panel will be John Fudrow from the University of Pittsburgh Libraries, Aurora Young, University of North Carolina, Charlotte Graduate School, Elise Fox and Dana Dickman from Sacramento State University Library. The moderators today are myself, Terry Green from University of Toledo, and Stacy Wallace. I don't know if Stacy is on here yet. I don't hear her. I will just continue to go along. And there's one more paragraph, but I'm skipping. And then on to the last one. Again, I'll leave it up and then read. Three accurate transcripts. Number 3, Terry. I'd like to welcome everyone to the plenary session, working 9 to 5 in your pajamas, life in the time of COVID-19. Presenting today or speaking on the panel are John from University of Pittsburgh Library, Aurora from UNC Charlotte, Elise and Dana from Sacramento State University Library. Today's moderators are me, Terry Green from University of Toledo, and Stacy Wallace. I don't know if Stacy is on here yet. I don't hear her. I'll continue to go along. So, all three of those were transcripts of the same audio, the same event. I'm putting them up here now side by side. I tried to make the text as readable as possible, but it's a lot. But these are the three transcripts that came from this one audio. I would say that they're all accurate. I would say that they all convey the same information, and after reading each of them, you walk away with the same understanding of what's going to be happening during this presentation. But what's different? And I used to teach, so I was waiting for hands to go up, but so I'll answer my own questions. But we noticed in the first one, all of the filler speech is included, the ums and the false starts and all and the extra speech. And so that was said, that was said, but when we're looking at it in this verbatim transcript, for me, it's clear, but it also disrupts the flow of the reading in many ways. I know what was said now, but if I were to look at this as a transcript apart from the audio, it's a little bit more difficult. If I want to experience this in a written format, when we look at this one in the middle, all of that filler speech has been taken out, all the ums, the hus, and the sentence flow is much closer to a written format, or if someone were to have scripted this. And in many ways, this sets up the reader to digest the information more easily and without the visual noise that was filtered out, without transcribing that auditory noise into the written and making that visual noise. So the translation of the translation of the auditory noise is not included in this, but it increases, I think, readability and how fast someone can go through and get this information. Now, in this last one, it's very, there's a lot less or a lot fewer words on the screen. But I think if we look at it, there's no less information shared. We don't have the people's last names, but we know who we're talking to. It's more concise. And if someone is just reading through this, they also have equal access to the information and the experience that's happening. But in this last one, this is where I'm going to bring in Kate in a little bit, but this last one is what we call meaning for meaning transcription. And the one in the middle is clean verbatim, where everything is spoken and everything said is captured, but that filler noise is cleared out. And then the first one, that's full verbatim, where everything is captured no matter what, and put into written format as easily as possible. So
can I jump in for a sec?
please,
We
yeah.
had a few things in the chat that I thought might be interesting.
Please, yeah, I'm not...
Yeah, so one person did comment when you were having us read that the ums were making me tired when they saw the first one. And then there was a question about that third transcript. I don't know if you want to go back to it for just a second, but yeah. It has a lot of abbreviations, and they were wondering if this interferes with accessibility.
Oh, in terms of like screen reading and things like that, or?
I have thoughts, but I don't know if you have thoughts on it.
Yeah, so good question and good observation. And I think a lot of that is going to be cleared up when I bring Kate on and we talk specifically about meaning for meaning and the contexts that it's used in. But yeah, that's a great point. And I think, can we come back to that after we talk a little bit more about it? We might cover it, and if we don't, if we can make sure we do, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely circle back to that. I'll write it down. So another question that someone asked, is it necessary to include the comment about Stacy not being there? Because that was kept in all of these.
Yeah, yes. I mean, she said Stacy wasn't there yet. It's an important piece of information. You know, the job is, it's very, you bring up a great point, because in many ways we're saying this needs to be a verbatim, accurate transcription of what was said, but at some point there is interpretation that goes into it. What is important? What do we need to include? What should we exclude? All of those things are really good questions. But when it comes to, you know, I don't know if Stacy is here yet, and that seems to be a main point. You know, Stacy is going to be presenting. She's not here. We don't see her. We can expect her coming later. You know, so it's not, in some ways, it is the job of the transcriber to decide what is most important, but ideally we want to capture as many of the main points, and we want to capture as much of the information that's shared as possible. You know, we see Stacy isn't here yet, and the other one, you know, and they all say, I don't hear her. You know, I don't hear her could maybe have been left out, but that Stacy isn't there seems important. And this is also, I think, you know, once I talk more about meaning for meaning and bring Kate into the conversation, a lot of those questions are going to be clear, because type well and meaning for meaning, I think, are the type of transcription service people are least familiar with, and it is geared for specific contexts and uses. You know, so it is different, but I think it's important we look at all of those questions and considerations. So yeah, did that answer that, or?
I think so, yeah. And I think that was all of the questions for now, and then I'll pop back in if I see more.
Great. Excellent. Oh, yeah, so I mean, I think that was actually really great questions, because it brought up what is really meant by accuracy. What do we need to include? What can we exclude? And how do we make sure that someone is getting clear access to information, equal access, you know, to information? And yeah, so I think we addressed quite a lot of that. excuse me, when we're talking about accuracy, you know, there's of course, are the words spelled correctly, but also is what was captured representing what was said accurately? Is punctuation accurate? You know, there's all sorts of ways of measuring accuracy. And a lot of it really depends, again, on the context. Where is this being used? How are we measuring the information that's being shared, and how are we measuring accuracy? So it's really important, you know, to understand, you know, are you looking for full verbatim? Are you looking for clean verbatim? Are you looking for access, in which case meaning for meaning is going to be great. You know, so you can't just have, you know, say this is 100% accurate or 99% accurate. You really need to know what you're measuring. And, you know, if you're doing this yourself, for recorded videos and such, or recorded audio, you need to know, you know, what level are you comfortable, how much time do you want to spend? Because as Amber said in the beginning, you know, you can spend a whole day doing, you know, a simple 1 hour video, depending on how detailed it needs to be. How much do you want in there? What are you considering, you know, to be accurate for the people that you're providing the service for? Or where is this transcript going, and what are they going to be considering accurate, and what's going to be useful for them? So that's to say, I don't have a clear answer as to what is meant by accurate, other than you have to ask the question for yourself and understand what services you're requesting, and make sure that those services match your expectations and what you paid for. Or if you did it yourself, that you know, you have someone looking it over with the same set of eyes and the same set of criteria for what accuracy means. Oh, great. Yeah. So just before we leave this, I wanted to play the audio so that, you know, it's about a minute long. Just wanted to play this, and so we can see, you can pick which one you'd like to look at, but they'll all be here. Here we go. Oh.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the plenary session. Roundtable discussion, working 9 to 5 in your pajamas, life in the time of COVID-19. Presenting today, or speaking on the panel, will be John Fudrow from the University of Pittsburgh Libraries, Ora Young, University of North Carolina at Charlotte Graduate School, Elise Fox and Dana Dickman from Sacramento State University Library. Your moderators today are myself, Terry Green from the University of Toledo, and Stacy Wallace. And I don't know if Stacy is on here yet. I don't hear her. So I will just continue to go along. So before we begin, during the presentation portion, just keep your microphone or phones muted unless you're a speaker. Please feel free to use the chat feature to pose questions. Those are going to be addressed during the Q&A portion. So I'd like to welcome everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and start asking each presenter a question that they all received already. So let me do that.
Great. So that was that, just so you could, you know, have access and hear the audio that these transcripts were based on. Great. And now that we have a basic understanding of what transcripts and transcription is, I'd like to look at, you know, the specific settings. I'd like to go through this somewhat quickly, because I'd like to bring Kate in so we have enough time to chat and then get to your questions. So one of the most common is obviously, you know, pre-recorded media, audio and video files. And we talked about this, you know, the type or manner of transcription is typically full verbatim or clean verbatim. You might see other terms like complete verbatim, for full verbatim, and some people call clean verbatim intelligent verbatim. But these two terms are the ones you're going to see the most often, and these are probably the two types of transcription that you'll be considering for any kind of audio or video project. In terms of delivery, you expect some sort of text document, a text file, a Word doc, PDF, or an HTML file. It can be static, so just that document with the text, but we are seeing more and more interactive transcripts, and that's where maybe I just show a quick example of that. Let's see if I can get a new share here. Okay, where just as a quick example.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the plenary session, roundtable discussion, working 9 to 5 in your pajamas, life in the time.
So an interactive transcript where the words are highlighted one by one as they're spoken. So in some ways, this is time coded and does require another step to add that time coding, but this is becoming more and more popular, and people can click the transcript and go through it and be brought to the space in the in the audio or the video. Let me just switch back. Thank you. Great. Okay. One moment. And then how do we go about this? So of course, there's automatic speech recognition. There's tons of tools that do that. Obviously, if you use speech to text tools or speech to text tools, automated speech recognition, you're going to want to check the quality of that, the accuracy of what's being spoken. It is getting really quite good. It is, especially if the quality of the audio is clear and the microphones used are high quality. A lot of people now are doing ASR plus human editing. That's there's more and more tools for that. Good old QWERTY keyboard, just type it out. Stenographers typing in with their steno pads and their steno keyboards. And then what's also becoming more popular now is voice writing. And this is different than just dictation. It or using, Google, the Google speech to text tool in a, in a Word document or in a Google Doc. When they're trained well, it can be at the same level as stenography and the same speed. But and then we come to real time or live, which is what we're doing now. And even though the end product is the same for the user, you're seeing the text. The way that we go about it is very different. And also because it's in real time, the skills of the person providing that service need to be very high. They need to be able to capture the speech in real time with 1 to 3 seconds delay. And so the skills and the tools that are used are very different. We have verbatim, and most of the time when we're talking about live transcription or live captioning, it's usually clean verbatim. It's very rare to see full verbatim in live settings. It's not impossible, but it's less common. And again, CART, communication access real-time transcription or translation. And then we also have meaning for meaning. And I'm going to, Kate, thank you. You're amazing. I'm going to bring you on in a moment to talk more about meaning for meaning. And unlike recorded media, where you can just give a text document, if they want, they can read the document. with or without the audio. When we're doing live transcription, there's a few players that are used to share the text in real time. So Stream Text, which is the tool that we're using today, if you clicked on those links that Paula provided earlier, that's through Stream Text. And almost every live transcriber, whether they're CART or verbatim, meaning for meaning, voice writer, stenographer, most people providing real-time service use Stream Text or OneCap app for their text delivery. So you can just, the writer can hook up to those tools, and then it's broadcast almost instantly. Stream Text, I believe, it is supported by screen readers, and I'm not certain about OneCap app. And then, of course, the video conferencing platform. So like today we're using Zoom. Zoom does have a transcript option. I believe it's slightly delayed, and that's because of Zoom, not because of anything that the providers are doing. There's just a delay in the in the Zoom transcript, but the captions tend to appear in real time. So have that. And then methods are very similar. ASR, many people use ASR. It's it's better than nothing, but a lot of times there's inaccuracies that are embarrassing or just give the very wrong message. Stenography is the classic, and voice writing becoming more popular. And I think one of the interesting things and one of the interesting possibilities of voice writing is the potential for live transcription in other languages, which is very difficult at this point. There's very few people who do live transcription in French. There's more who do it in Spanish, but kind of beyond those three, it's very difficult to find people to do real time. And then Typewell, which does meaning for meaning, and then Cprint, which also does meaning for meaning, but in a slightly different way. So with all of that, I'd like to now bring on Kate to help me talk about Typewell. Kate and I have worked together for a long, almost 10 years now. I started out as a Typewell provider, a Typewell transcriptionist, captioner, and that's how I got into this industry. And Kate became the executive director a few years after I got involved. And she's been just so great at keeping the company focused and delivering excellent training to the providers and making sure that really Typewell stays a very high quality method of transcription, but it is very different from verbatim that many people are used to. So I wanted to talk about those differences and with Kate today, and she can say she could say all this a lot better than I can. So Kate, thanks so much for being here and joining me, and for all the great work you do at Typewell, and excited to share more about Typewell with this audience.
Thanks, Dan. And I should have said this in the beginning. I just want to acknowledge that I'm from Tucson, which is the ancestral and current land of the Tohono O'odham, Pasquayaqui, Yoeme, and Hohokam peoples. And because I did not follow best practice and provide the captionist with the spellings of those names, I pasted that in the chat just now. As a visual description, I'm white, cis woman in my 40s with brown hair, blue eyes, I'm wearing glasses and a blue shirt. Okay, so Typewell is a live or real-time transcription service provided by a human transcriber, as Dan has explained, but we train our transcribers to translate spoken English into clear, concise written English, which often using fewer words. And I will talk about why and how, because that's really important. That term, meaning for meaning, is meant to distinguish it from word for word. I've also heard it described as text interpreting, hybrid captioning. It's hard to come up with a good way to describe it. You kind of only know it when you see it. But transcribers who do type well intentionally edit in real time so that the typed transcript is concise, clearly worded, grammatically correct. Usually the sentences are relatively short, and the goal is quick understanding of the speaker's intended message. And I will explain why. Spoken English, as you know, is really messy. A lot of false starts, meaningless utterances, repetitions. And sometimes those repetitions are necessary for understanding or for emphasis, but many times they're not. There are a lot of sentence fragments, run-on sentences that run on and on and on, and that's just the way we speak. And as hearing people, we adjust to that, we're used to that. But that's not typically the way we read, and at least not if we want to read quickly. So TypeWell was designed specifically with deaf and hard of hearing students in mind, particularly, excuse me, high school, college students. I apologize, I'm fighting a cold. High school and college students who are in the classroom reading a transcript in real time, and they're in classes all day, and so their eyes get fatigued, and so they're having to consume all of this visual information, not just their transcript, but all of the other things that they have to access visually throughout the day. So taking into account that their English reading level might be slower than that of their hearing peers, and taking into account screen time, eye fatigue, and also their desire to participate in the class and not have their eyes glued to a screen the entire time. To that end, TypeWell is usually viewed in a full transcript mode, either through stream text or we have our own web player. So our transcribers also make intentional use of white space, you know, paragraphing and making sure that it's not just a huge block of text. And that's not just to reduce eye fatigue, but also it's for topic organization, because we expect that students are going to be scrolling back and looking at what they missed or trying to review something. And so students need to be able to look away and rest their eyes or rest their head on their desk, just like every other student in the classroom does. And so they do need to be able to scroll back and see what they missed. And obviously if they were just seeing captions that appeared on the screen for a couple seconds and then disappeared, they wouldn't have that same kind of access. TypeWell transcribers also provide a copy of that full transcript after class for students to study. That's a secondary use of TypeWell, but the real-time access is the primary use. So over the course of an hour, you can imagine that a TypeWell transcriber is making thousands of decisions about which words to include, which words to exclude, and even sometimes which words to add. For example, words that are implied but that weren't actually spoken. You know, how do you rephrase or rearrange the words that you hear to make them clear in written format? Where do you insert white space? When do you include nonverbal cues, like a door closing in the background, or a joke, or a cell phone ringing? And TypeWell transcribers are human, so they have limits. Making all of these decisions in real time is very exhausting. There's mental fatigue that sets in. So if a speaker is speaking, 400 words a minute, the transcriber has to condense the message. There's just no question. So we're always making these trade-offs. But again, we're making those trade-offs with the goal of quick understanding. And I think humans are able to do that kind of meaning for meaning, real-time editing far better than a computer can at this point. But those transcripts also contain mistakes, just like computer-generated transcripts. You'll see a variety of skill levels. There's a range of experience. There's a range of quality, just like every other service you might implement. So there are just a lot of factors at play, including the speed of the message, the quality of the audio, the speaker's accent, background noise, crosstalk, which is when people are talking over each other. And Typewell was originally developed to be used in the classroom by service providers who could be trained quickly, who could use a regular laptop computer, and who could type on a QWERTY keyboard. So it was designed to be a service that you could implement relatively quickly and affordably if you were a school that suddenly had a deaf student who enrolled and you're like, oh, we need to get this accommodation up and running. And so the people who originally developed Typewell wanted to make it accessible to those transcribers by keeping their training relatively short and straightforward. And they wanted it to be accessible to the schools by keeping the training and the software licenses relatively affordable. But as it turns out, you know, what we're doing is exceptionally useful, not just for deaf and hard of hearing students. Disability communication access is not a monolith. You know, there's not a one size fits all solution or accommodation. And sometimes you're implementing accommodation for a single individual, whereas other times you're trying to use universal design and to achieve, you know, universal accessibility, if such a thing even exists. So I think when you're choosing between these different captioning or transcription methods, you do need to consider the audience and whether you're focused on accommodating a specific person to be compliant with the law or achieve, you know, accessibility that's affordable, that everyone might use. And so we're taking into account people's hearing ability, their reading level, their sightedness, their processing speed, their attention, cognitive abilities, and all of that. So those are just, that's sort of my intro to Typewell and what Meaning for Meaning is about and kind of where it evolved out of. And I'm excited to think about and learn about other places where it might be useful and applicable.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. That was great. And one of the things I wanted to bring up that I think is really special about Typewell is the math mode and the ability, you know, to not just do transcription of what is said, but also to be able to do very advanced math and, you know, physics and equations and things. You know, my training's as a musician, so I can count to 4. You know, so I never got to that part of Typewell, but that seems to also be a very powerful component of Typewell, specifically in this you know, for meaning in the educational space.
Yeah, and that kind of relates to this question that I see in the chat, which is what backgrounds do Typewell transcribers come from? And they come from all different backgrounds. A lot of colleges hire college students, student workers, to become Typewell transcribers. They send them through our training, and they work in the classroom providing services for their peers at the college, in addition to taking their own classes. So they could be studying anything and working as a transcriber in any other classes. Folks who come from the community have backgrounds in I mean, really, to become a Typewell transcriber, to go through our training, you just need to be a fast typist. You need to have strong English skills and listening ability. And we have some screening tests, but other than that, we don't have any specific requirements about your background. So it's not like, yeah, so we're not keeping anyone out of the field necessarily. If you have a background in math and science, we will absolutely encourage you to learn to use the math and science dictionary that's built into our software, and that allows you to, again, use the QWERTY keyboard to type complex formulas and scientific notations and embed those into your transcript. And to do so relatively quickly, that takes a lot of practice to learn that skill because it's tricky, but we have developed some, you know, training to help, hands-on training to help transcribers do that. As you can imagine, it helps to have a background. If you're going into a highly technical class to be a service provider, it helps to have background knowledge in that area. So if you're somebody who's coordinating those services, you want to look at not just do they have a Typewell qualification, but do they also have this specialized background? And sign language interpreters do the same thing. I think I would assume cart writers, same thing. You know, if you're going into a legal program, do you have legal background? If you're going into a medical program, do you have medical background? Medical transcriptionists often transition into type well or cart or something, and so that valuable access to vocabulary can really be useful for those niche settings.
Yeah, and so it seems like, you know, if after you go through that type well training, you're pretty well suited to transcribe high school classes, and then undergrad courses, maybe up to, you know, the senior year when things get a little more specialized. But like you said, if you do have a specialty, you know, it is helpful, but most transcribers can go into general places and do just fine. And, you know, you would want to inform someone beforehand if there was any kind of special content.
Right, exactly. And if you're planning an event like this one today, and you know that people are going to be giving land acknowledgements, or you're going to be reading something verbatim, it's always nice to give your provider access to those verbatim scripts or those special names that have unique spellings in advance, because you can't expect a human provider or a computer to know all of those words and pronunciations and the mispronunciations. So yeah, there's a lot to consider when you're implementing a live accommodation, just like there are a million things to consider when you're doing post-production work.
Right, and to jump back to that question Amber brought up earlier about abbreviations, you know, I think it's important to look at, you know, the type well transcript is really it is geared towards deaf and hard of hearing students, and, you know, not necessarily for a screen reader to go into. But I mean, it seems like that could be something that could be considered or done, just like that's a small difference in output that the writer could very easily do if that's going to open up a lot more possibilities. So I wouldn't say that abbreviating you know, university or things like that as a standard for type well. That's a choice that that specific writer made based off of their understanding of what was going to be useful to the person using it at the time. So it's sometimes, I think, very difficult because we're talking about specific settings and then also trying to come up with ways that this could be more generally used, and to have that understanding be shared, so that if someone is looking at a meaning for meaning transcript, they understand that that is going to be different than a verbatim, or, you know, a clean verbatim or a full verbatim, and to understand and understand its value and what it is that they'll be getting from it.
Yeah. Is there time for me to share a quick anecdote sort of from my experience as a transcriber? Okay, it won't be long. I was transcribing an MBA program in accounting for a deaf student from Korea who had a cohort of other Korean students who were hearing also in his classes. And I noticed after the first couple of days of transcribing that all of his friends were sitting behind us and looking over my shoulder at the screen. So they were all English language learners, and they benefited from this service as well, because if they missed something, they could look at the screen. If there was a new term that the professor introduced that they couldn't understand or wasn't written on the board, they could look at my screen and verify that they and learn it. But I also know that it was helpful for them to see how I was translating spoken English into written English. And I think in terms of their language learning, it was helpful to see, like, oh, that's a different way of phrasing this. Or, you know, that was a really long run-on sentence, but now I'm seeing it in concise, grammatically correct English sentences. And their eyes were glued to the screen. And so I was certain that a lot of them are using it not just to verify, you know, vocabulary, but also just to improve their reading ability, their English grammar skills. And I found that really fascinating. There's not a lot of research or any research that I know of, except at maybe one university, about the use of Typewell for English language learners. But having the, you're hearing it verbatim, but then seeing it in a slightly different grammatical form, I think can be really valuable for some people. And I've also heard students with, neurodiverse students say that they use it to kind of anchor their attention and their concentration through the class. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of places where Typewell can be used, where outside of just the education setting, it's definitely great for where it's at. And, there's just so many uses and potentials for it. I'm really glad we had the chance to talk about it today. And, I think we're getting near the end of the time, and I do want to make sure we have time for some questions and everything. But just to wrap up, what we've been talking about, there's transcription, as we saw, there's so many different places, context. There's a lot of different vocabulary around it, and the goal here today wasn't to standardize any of that, but to really just open us all up to the different terms and backgrounds of people who use the service, so that when we are deciding how to make our digital content accessible, or video and audio content accessible, that we know how to ask the right questions, so that we're getting the service that's needed for who's ever going to be using it, whether that's a general audience or one specific person, but that we have the vocabulary and the tools to make sure we're doing it as best we can. So, Kate, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk about meaning for meaning, and especially with this group that and this audience that it's been really great to be a part of the past year or so. So, how should we do questions?
I haven't seen any officially come into the question thing, but I wrote a few down. So maybe you guys can answer my questions. I always like the meetups because it's like I get my personal consultation too. So I was sort of curious, when I was watching the two transcripts, I noticed there was use of italics in the Typewell transcript. Yeah. And which was kind of cool. And I'm wondering, do you have a style guide somewhere, or how would a captioner know when to use bold or italics or something like that?
Kate?
Yeah, we don't have an official style guide. We have an unofficial one that we were working on actually with one university, but I do know that many transcribers have started just customarily adding emphasis to vocabulary words or references to homework or tests or quizzes or anything where they're thinking ahead to when the student might be referencing the transcript later and using it as a study tool. And so they're trying to draw attention to like key points and key transitions throughout the transcript. I'm not sure where the italics were used here. Maybe they were just used to demonstrate emphasis. But there's not an official style guide, and different people make different decisions about those. And also when you're working with an individual student, I think it's a good practice to ask them. I know a lot of students have said, I just have one of my transcribers does the bolding and I really like it, but none of the other ones do. And so we say, well, ask them to, show them what you like, because it is a human and humans can customize their output and humans can improve their skills. And then, so that's just something that was sort of invented by the transcribers and not really taught by us. And it has become a pretty widespread practice. So that's, I agree. Really neat. Cool.
I mean, I was thinking about it as you were talking about that, and then the fact that, they get the transcript to reference later, and I was like, they don't have to take notes. Mm-hmm. I remember the binders from college, like binders. That's how old I am. I don't know if they use binders anymore, but right? And I was just thinking, oh, that'd be so handy to have someone sit there and take all my notes for me. I mean, I guess you have to go back through and highlight the important parts because you probably don't want it all, right?
Well, some Typewell transcribers do, bold they make good use of those style features. And, like Kate was saying, if you do have that conversation with your student, or the people using it, kind of what they're looking for, and can add that in as needed. But I just want to give a shout out to Diana, my business partner, who's been doing the TypeWell transcript today. She's worked in almost every kind of setting, and she's just top notch. But yeah, it's so interesting kind of what is possible with the output. And that's also, I think, TypeWell is really great program, because it just allows for that level of output and that level of customization. So it can be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. So another question I had, and I know you touched on this a little bit, like providing information in advance to captioners, but are there other things that speakers can do to make themselves easier to caption for captioners?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was speaking quickly because I was sensitive about time. And I was also reading from notes, and when you're reading from notes, or when you're nervous, when you're presenting, you tend to speak really quickly. And one thing that I try to remind panelists, at special events, is that if you modulate your rate of speech and include pauses, the way a teacher does, the way a teacher uses wait time, you're not just making it more accessible for the captionist to keep up with you, you're making it easier for hearing people to process what you're saying. And you're also, I think, relaxing yourself a little bit. So just packing in words can be really hard, not just on the people who are having to read it, but also on the people who are listening. So that's just one thing I can think of is pausing and speaking at a normal conversational rate.
Yeah, I would agree. And yes, I was very nervous today, so I'm sure my rate was a little bit faster. But the other thing, aside from pacing and speaking clearly, is the technology, and just making sure that you have a good microphone, good internet connection, because a lot of these events are remote, and you spend so much time and money and energy setting everything up, and then if you have a bad connection, the provider can't hear everything. And so if the provider can't hear, it really doesn't matter whether it's speech to text or a human provider. That setup needs to be really good if you're wanting the output to be good. So making sure that the tech is in place and working properly. It seems simple enough, but a lot of times in educational settings, that's overlooked, or bandwidth is at a premium. So, but yeah,
I also think I appreciate getting an access to the slides in advance if speakers have slides, even if they're not totally finished, and people change their slides up to the very last minute. That's fine. Mostly just to get a sense of what the flow is going to be like, and to put any tricky words into your own dictionary so that you don't have to trip over them when you're typing. Just common sense things like that. And in classes, often transcribers will have access to Blackboard or whatever the learning management system is, so that they can get those slides, they can see the text. Yeah.
And I think also, just if there are going to be any pre-recorded videos in a presentation, that those be captioned and transcribed beforehand, so that the captionist isn't, or the transcriber isn't, rushing to do that, because very often videos are faster paced. You don't know if, it could be advertisements, there's a whole lot of things. And so if all of that can be done ahead of time, that also increases the quality of the experience for everybody.
Yeah, having the captions, closed captions that are on the video screen itself is really equal access. If you're asking a student to look back and forth between a movie and a computer screen, that's not really equal access. Yeah.
Well, this has been a really, really great presentation. I really appreciate both of you coming, and I had no idea about all the meaning for meaning, and I appreciate you took the initiative to suggest we get both up in stream text so we could look at them side by side. I took some screenshots. I think it's been very handy, and I will definitely put those into docs that we put with the recording so that people can access those after the fact if they want to compare them. How, just as our last thing, how can people get a hold of you if they have additional follow-up questions? Where's the best place to reach out?
Email, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm not on Twitter or Facebook.
Okay. And
Yeah.
I do think Paula put your LinkedIn in the chat, but if not, we
She
can
did.
throw it in.
I think she,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so.
And how about for you,
Kate?
Kate?
Yeah, I just put my email, and our website is typewell.com, and there's a contact form. And I am also on LinkedIn, and we're on Facebook.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.